Well, howdy, friends. I'm back here with another episode of the podcast, and today I'm talking about living in chronic stress, because for most of my adult life, I lived in that state of chronic stress, and I overate whatever I wanted to try to get rid of that constant level of stress that I felt. But since understanding that stress has been a major reason that I used to be eating like all the time, I've lost 250 pounds and kept it off since 2013. The weight loss, of course, is great, but even better than the weight loss is now I can more readily recognize when I am in a state of stress or headed towards a state of chronic stress and deal with it in ways that actually reduce the stress rather than add to it. So one thing God had wanted me to do for years was give up foods made with processed sugar and or flour. Now, these were my go-to foods in time of stress, which I seemed to live in constantly. It was the way I dealt with any situation or even which stirred up feelings that stressed me out. It numbed the pain of having to deal with whatever I was in the midst of at the time. Well, I will say that it did that for a short time. And then, as we know all too well, I needed more food, more of those same kind of foods to numb the feelings some more. And this was the endless cycle that I called my life. God gave me my forever lifestyle change plan back in 1977, but I felt I would literally die if I stopped eating things made with sugar and flour. It took me many ups and downs and trials and heartaches of gaining and losing, and then gaining back all that weight I lost plus more on countless occasions before I finally surrendered to God's plan for my life. This was very intertwined with my stress level because I felt like I needed those foods. I needed to continue to eat those foods, right, to deal with this emotional stress that I felt. But those foods added physical stress to my body in terms of pounds. And at 430 pounds, I lived in a state of chronic stress just because of that amount of weight on my body. And anyone who is in that category of super morbidly obese, you know that you have put your bodies into this situation. Living in chronic stress of any kind is no fun. And many of us are there, and we may not even realize it. So today I want to talk about chronic stress, kind of what it is, and some ways we begin to manage it. And by the way, a lot of those ways will be in the action steps, which you can find by signing up for the free course, which is Eating Stress. And you can do that by going to teresashieldsparker.com/stress. That link is going to be down in the show notes. So I am realizing one of the ways or the reasons that I lived in chronic stress is because I put myself there. I put myself there with my constant striving to be better and to do more and to achieve more. And part of the reason I do that is because I am an achiever, okay? Every personality test I take, I come out as some version of an achiever, even though I try to manipulate the test so that I don't, because I want to achieve something, right? It's just who I am, and it's the way God made me. But just because he made me this way doesn't mean I have to push so hard that I make myself sick. So on the Enneagram test, which is a personality test that divides individuals into 9 categories, I come out as a 3, which is termed the successful achiever. Now, all personalities have both their good and their bad traits, right? And as a 3, it tells me that my main goal in life is having high status and respect, being admired, successful, and valuable. But the flip side of that is my core fear, and that is failing to be successful and being thought of as incompetent, inefficient, and worthless. So this helps me understand how for so many years I lived in chronic stress by overworking and overdoing everything. You might say I was driven, and truth be told, I have to guard against that desire even now. But I'm older and hopefully a bit wiser. I've been through this a time or two. I see how this is affecting me even still today, and I know better how to manage it. But back when I weighed 430 pounds and was eating everything in sight, I was also spending money we didn't have by putting everything on credit cards. Now that got us into debt, especially while I was staying home with our children and doing freelance work, so I wasn't working a full-time job like I had been. And to be clear, the debt was my fault. Okay, I'm going to assume all of the responsibility for the debt. My husband is really good with money. He's good with saving money. But since I had more time, I paid the bills. I managed the money. Probably not a good idea, right? But when God finally got through to me that debt is bondage, then my husband and I worked together to pay off the debt. But we didn't pay off our debts without making some hard decisions. And one of those was that I went back to work. It was still a work from home situation. I was doing editing. And then I was also taking care of mentally and behaviorally challenged foster teens and young adults, which was really the thing that made us the more money because of the level of care we had to provide. Now, it helped us financially, which relieved me on one stress, right? But dealing with the problems of those with great needs on a 24/7 basis definitely added to my ongoing stress level, which added to me thinking that I needed even more of all the foods I love just to survive living in my own home. Now, I don't think an Enneagram 3 should ever be in this type of work. I really don't. Everywhere I looked, I felt like I was not succeeding. I thought it would be something that would make me feel like I was, being helpful and succeeding in something. But, it really didn't. But I also have what is called a wing or a supportive personality, which is the type 2, which is the supportive advisor. So this is the type of person who wants to be appreciated, loved, and wanted. And in many ways, it was this personality type that kicked in during this time. However, problem with 2s is that we tend to focus on the emotions and the needs of others. We live for the thank yous and the I love you moms. And there were some of those in this line of work, but there were also lots of the core fears for a 2, which include being rejected by those we are trying to help. Needless to say, during the 20 years we did this, chronic stress was still a big issue for me. It was the constant push and pull between the need to make money and these ongoing issues that go with taking care of very unstable individuals. I didn't realize I was in chronic stress. I just thought it was dealing with life, right? It's the card you're dealt. So you just deal with it. But the toll it took on my body rose to a crescendo in 1999 when a cardiac surgeon told me I had 5 years to live if I didn't lose weight and keep it off. Trying to eat away my stress was definitely not working for me at all. And I look back on the year before that, before going into the hospital, and I see clearly how things got so out of whack. First of all, I encountered a difficult issue in the church that we were an active part of, which threw me for an emotional loop, and I spiraled into a type of depression for several months. The pastor wasn't who I thought he was, and I won't go into that, but you know the issues that can come when you're part of something that you're very dedicated to, and then something happens and you realize this isn't what I thought it was. And then second, during that time, I began this part-time editing job for several publications. I really enjoyed it, but I didn't know that we would also be taking in one of our greatest challenges in that next month, right? So the third thing is we took in our first mentally and behaviorally challenged foster son. Now, my son, who was 15 at the time, summed it up by saying this: Mom, what happens when you put a dysfunctional person in a functional family? Yeah, we had become, by definition, a dysfunctional family because we now had a dysfunctional member. And to tell you the truth, I felt even more dysfunctional than he did, okay? And then number 4, our house, our physical house, was definitely too small to add a grown, man-sized 15-year-old with behavior issues. We thought he could share a room with my son. That did not work. He needed his own bedroom and bathroom, which he kind of wanted to live in that bathroom all the time. And he needed a much bigger yard to run off the energy that he had. Being more active did, when we moved, it helped him lower his aggression, which was really off the charts at many times. If he could walk it off, if he could go outside and play, if he could run, he would be too tired to take out those aggressions on us, on me, okay? So, that's the reason we decided to move. So now we had invested in a larger home, and we needed the extra income of both my freelance editing and the higher level foster care to contribute to pay the mortgage. So I was literally burning the candle at all ends. It should not have come to my surprise then when I got to the point that I could barely walk or breathe. And of course, one of the questions the doctor always asks is, have you been under any stress lately? Yeah, I wanted to laugh. The better question would have been, when have I not been under stress? Now, I put myself there. Do you understand? I put myself there. So I can't blame it on God. I can't blame it on anyone else. I blame it on myself. But when I was stressed, which was all the time, I ate, which was all the time. Overeating led to high blood pressure, diabetes, heart issues, back and knee issues. Basically, I hurt all over. The cardiac doctor I saw thought that I needed open heart surgery, so that is what landed me in the hospital. And during the angioplasty that they did prior to open heart surgery, they determined my heart was fine. I didn't need a valve replacement, but I had congestive heart failure. That's not so easily fixed because the only cure, he told me, was to lose weight. Here's what he said: you don't need open heart surgery. You need to lose weight and keep it off, or you'll be dead in 5 years. This wasn't the first time that a doctor had told me I needed to lose weight, but this was the first time a doctor had said it in such a way that it really made me mad. But it also got my full attention because he had added an expiration date on my life. For the first time, I faced my own mortality. It was the moment that Deuteronomy 30:19-20 talks about. It says, "Today I have given you the choice between life and death, between blessings and curses." Friends, this is talking to somebody right now. I feel it deeply in my spirit. Now I call on heaven and earth to witness the choice you make. Oh, my friends, you have a choice. He always gives us a choice. Oh, that you would choose life so that you and your descendants might live. what we're doing affects our descendants, people. You can make this choice by loving the Lord your God, obeying him, and committing yourself firmly to him. This is the key to your life. And if you love and obey the Lord, you will live long in the land. For the very first time, my friends, I saw that my way of dealing with the stress of everyday life was literally killing me. I was choosing death. I just didn't realize it. I wanted to choose life. I wanted to live to see my children grow up, get married, and do all the great things I know they do. I wanted to be around to love on my grandchildren. By the way, still waiting for that to happen. You can say a prayer, okay? And I wanted to grow old with my husband. I wanted to choose life. And these verses tell me that in order to do that, I have to do at least 3 things. Number 1, love the Lord your God and make him my God. Love the Lord and make him my God. Not all the foods that I was eating nonstop. Number 2, obey the Lord. And I remembered what he told me in 1977, over 20 years before, which was to stop eating sugar and bread and eat more meat, fruits, and vegetables. He'd spoken those same words to me many times since. It was an act of obedience that I needed to start doing. And number 3, commit myself firmly to him. I was committed to eating what I wanted, and I thought I was committed to following God. The problem was that doing what I wanted and what God wants was not working. They were conflicting. So this was just the start of my turnaround point. It should have motivated me to do what God told me in 1977, but I still had several more years to wallow through my difficulties. I did go on a diet and I lost 100 pounds. This time I kept it off longer, but because I still didn't see what I was doing as a sin against God, I did not commit to it fully. So this kind of reminds me of a Charles Spurgeon quote a friend shared the other day, and it says, "If you will not have death unto sin, you shall have sin unto death. There is no alternative. If you do not die to sin, you shall die from sin. If you do not slay sin, sin will slay you." Now, I had to read that quote a couple of times, and it'll be in the download transcript so you can see that if you go to the course. But Spurgeon is a theologian who lived in the 1800s. So sometimes his phraseology is a little bit difficult to understand. I wanted to be sure I understood it because I knew it held a hidden gem for me. You know, when you read something, you realize, I got to really understand this well to see how it applies to me. And that quote was certainly one for me. What he is saying here is if we don't recognize what sin is in our lives, it becomes a part of our everyday lifestyle. Once we let it in, once we open the door, give it a foothold, let it in, it will rule us. It will become a stronghold, and it will cause our demise. So then it hit me like a sledgehammer. This was what was happening to me for over 30 years. Because, see, I understood the fact that my sins, failures, and missteps are going to lead me down a treacherous path, just like Spurgeon said. That wasn't my problem. I understood what sin would do in my life. My problem was that I did not see what I was doing by overeating as a sin. I had no problem seeing other sins like getting drunk, taking illegal drugs, cheating on your husband, stealing pornography, and a whole slew of others. But overeating was never in that category for me. So when sin becomes commonplace, meaning everyone is doing it without thinking, it becomes a normal lifestyle. We don't even think about it because everywhere we look, we are being enticed towards our main vice. And for me, that was eating whatever I wanted, whenever I wanted to. So even in the church, we don't see overeating as sin. It's not on the list of sins that we recount. However, I want to challenge that a little bit, because if you read the list in Galatians 5:19 through 21, if you read it in different versions, in the New Matthew Bible, it includes something we really need to pay attention to. So here's what it says. And I'm going to stop and say a few things in between here, but here's what it says. The deeds of the flesh are manifest, which are these: adultery, fornication, uncleanness, wantonness, idolatry, witchcraft, hatred, dissension, ambition, anger, rivalry, factious uprisings, sects, S-E-C-T-S, envying, murder, drunkenness. We all agree with all of those, right? So it's good so far, right? Then he adds the last one, gluttony, and such like, of which I warn you, as I have told you in time past, that people who commit such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. Woo! It's kind of difficult stuff. People who commit such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. But then, of course, Galatians 5:22 through 24 continues and says, but the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, forbearance, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Against such things there is no law. And those who belong to Christ Jesus have crucified the flesh with its passions and desires. Now, I'm not really ready to get into a theological discussion about these passages, because we know we have all committed sins, no matter what they're called or how we view them. We have all sinned. As Christians, though, we are not sinless. Galatians 5:25, in the Passion Translation, which is the next verse after these verses, says, if the Spirit is the source of your life, we must also allow the Spirit to direct every aspect of our life. We all make mistakes. So these verses are not talking about living a sin-free life. That's a goal, but, only one has attained that, right? And I'm glad we're under his covering. But they are a warning against making these various sins a lifestyle. I confess that I was doing that for years with gluttony, which the dictionary defines as habitual greed in excess in eating. Habitual greed or excess in eating. That's why I say that the day that I surrendered sugar to God was my come to Jesus moment. It was as real or even more real than my salvation experience. And I was saved when I was 7, so the worst thing I had done was stealing candy from the grocery store. And all I wanted that day when I surrendered to Jesus, or when I accepted him, was fire insurance. Instead, I got his grace. And it was his grace that I finally called on that day in 2009 to surrender completely to God and allow him to begin to lead me in how to stop eating stress in the form of sugar and carbohydrates. I surrendered sugar to God that day, but it was also the beginning of me learning why I ate when I really wanted to lose weight. For me, overeating had very little really to do with weight, though that was the most obvious issue. I needed to learn how to manage my stress. If I could do that, I could start towards a healthier way of eating. First, I had to eliminate everything I was doing except necessary things like work. I had filled any free time with doing everything for everyone else and not charging for what I did. I think it's part of my achiever or something. I'm not sure. But this added plenty of stress to my life because I had no downtime, had no margin in my life. I wrote articles, managed publications, edited publications, served on committees and boards of directors, volunteered for things that I didn't even enjoy doing. And I did all of these for organizations I was a part of and believed in, and I charged nothing for doing it. I did all of this out of guilt. I'm going to confess that to you right now. Because I couldn't seem to do the one thing God wanted me to do, the thing which would have been the best for me to do, which was to give up sugar and begin eating healthy. So I did all these other things, trying to earn brownie points from God. That never works, friends, because doing all of this only stressed me out even more. And then I felt I needed to eat more. And it's that endless cycle of chronic stress. When I decided to go all in with making health my priority, I focused on managing our foster care business and managing my health. I got a trainer. I went to various doctors and specialists to get my health in order. I learned what supplements to take. I exercised every weekday in the water. I went to a support group for those on the weight loss journey, led by my mentor, who's also a Christian and very familiar with the food issues and addiction. What I really want you to understand is that no matter who you are, no matter, you can be the most important person in the world. I'm serious. If you are the most important person in the world, I'm going to guarantee you that chronic stress is there in your life, and it can overwhelm you and cause you to run to something that feels like it's making the stress go away. And basically, when we overeat and continue to overeat, that becomes gluttonous behavior, which God definitely puts in the sin category. And yes, I'm saying it right now, overeating can be a sin. So first we must confess to God and then surrender these tendencies to Him. We have to turn to Him when we are stressed and overwhelmed. And also recognize the signs, because a lot of us don't even know what's happening when these things are occurring in our body. We don't really understand, well, why am I getting angry more easily? Why am I so tired all the time? Why do I have such aches and pains? Why do I feel like sweaty sometimes? Why do I feel nervous? Why do I feel like I can't sit still? Why do I have continual headaches? Why do I have trouble like just thinking and processing through things? Why do I have trouble sleeping? Why do I have an upset stomach? Why am I experiencing like mild chest pain? Why am I continually craving things like chocolate? And why am I feeling like I just can't stop eating? Others may feel lonely, erratic. They may cry for no reason. They may feel confused. Stress is really insidious. It doesn't announce itself as stress. But when you examine your life and you see the signs in your body, you will begin to understand. I've learned, and my body tells me that I am stressed by shutting down my brain early, which for me is around 6 o'clock, especially if I've been working all day. Because usually I like working later at night. I like working to 10 o'clock. But this will happen when I'm pushing hard on a self-imposed, did you see that? Self-imposed deadline. So I've learned to just walk away and spend some quiet time with God, soaking in His presence. If it's self-imposed, I can adjust the deadline. There are many things we can do besides overeating to handle stress, because overeating never really handles it. It just gives us more stress. So I'll have the action steps in the transcript for this episode, which will be in the eating stress course. This episode will be the next lesson. It will be lesson 2 in the course sequence. The transcript download is the only place to access the action steps, the definitive action steps that go with this lesson. So I don't want you to miss it. Just sign up at teresashieldsparker.com/stress. Each week you will receive an email when the new lesson has been uploaded. So next week, we'll continue talking about this elusive thing called stress. If you have questions, please send them to me at info@teresashieldsparker. Questions about stress, so I can answer them next week, okay? Sweet grace for your journey.